Welcome to the Kindness Effect, where small moments open hearts and change lives, starting with ours. Now, your host, Jim Ellis.
Hello, friends. I'm Jim Ellis, and this is The Kindness Effect, a podcast about the small choices that can change a moment, a relationship, and sometimes an entire community. Because kindness rarely stops with one person, it creates a ripple. Have you ever decided you knew exactly what kind of person someone was, only to discover that you didn't know the whole story? I have. I wish I could tell you that I always respond with the patience and understanding you might expect from someone who hosts a podcast about kindness. I do not. I am, unfortunately, like you, human. I am fallible. Sometimes, as a theater director, I'm the person watching the rehearsal room door, checking the clock and thinking, how hard is it to arrive on time? Life has a way of reminding us that talking about kindness and practicing it, especially when we're frustrated, are two very different things. Let me tell you a story. Now, in addition to hosting this podcast, as I mentioned before, I work as a theater producer and director, bringing many different personalities together to tell one story. A few years ago, I was directing a production when one member of the cast began arriving late to rehearsal. When they did arrive, they seemed distracted. They missed cues and forgot things we had already covered. Every time that door opened late, I became more irritated. From where I stood, the situation looked simple. Everyone else had made the effort to be there, and this person had not. I began telling myself a story about them, that they were irresponsible, they didn't respect the cast, they didn't care. Notice how quickly that happened. I had a few pieces of information, and my mind generously supplied the entire missing plot. No audition required. One evening, I was prepared to deliver a very direct speech. In my head, it was clear and firm and beautifully organized, and naturally, I won every imaginary argument. But before I delivered it, I asked one question. Is everything okay? There was a pause. And then I learned that this person was dealing with a serious family situation. Their routine had been turned upside down. They were trying to manage responsibilities at home while still honoring their commitment to the production. They weren't arriving late because they didn't care. They were arriving because they cared enough to keep trying. The behavior I had interpreted as disrespect was the visible edge of a struggle I could not see. The schedule still mattered. The rest of the cast still deserved communication and reliability. Kindness did not mean pretending that the lateness had no effect. But now we could address the real problem instead of the character flaw I had invented. We made a plan, we adjusted what we could, clarified expectations, and moved forward with understanding instead of accusation. One simple question changed the entire conversation. We often see someone's behavior long before we see their burden. Now, how do we leave room for what we don't know? Every person we meet may be carrying something we cannot immediately see. It could be grief, anxiety, financial pressure, loneliness, a difficult diagnosis, conflict at home, the exhaustion of caring for somebody else. A teenager who appears uninterested may be worried about what is waiting at home. A coworker who seems unusually quiet may be trying to hold themselves together. That cashier who's moving a little slow, they may have been standing there for 7 hours while dealing with a problem that did not disappear when their shift began. Even the person who cuts us off in traffic may be facing an emergency. Kindness does not require us to abandon all powers of observation. It asks us to leave a little room for what we don't know. When I make a mistake, I know all the circumstances surrounding it. I can explain it. I was tired. I was overwhelmed. I misunderstood. I was having a difficult day. But when someone else makes a mistake, I may decide the mistake reveals who they are. They're rude, lazy, careless, self-centered. We give ourselves context while giving other people labels. Kindness interrupts that habit and says, there may be more to this story. Now, you can have compassion with boundaries. Now, don't get me wrong, because understanding that someone may be struggling does not mean accepting cruelty, manipulation, abuse, or unsafe behavior. Compassion and boundaries can exist together. Now, we can say, I understand that you're under pressure, but you may not speak to me that way. In my home, we often say you can be angry or sad or frustrated, but you can't be mean. We can care about what someone is experiencing while still holding them accountable for what they do. Kindness is not pretending everything is fine. Sometimes kindness is a patient question. It's a second chance, or it's a clear and respectful no. The goal is not to excuse every behavior. The goal is to avoid reducing a human being to their worst moment. One bad choice, one bad decision does not define an entire person's humanity. So let's say someone is really getting on our last nerve. What do? Try this. Begin with one breath. In for 4 counts, out for 4 counts. You don't need a week-long retreat. You don't need 40 minutes of meditation when someone blocks the grocery store aisle with their cart. Just one breath. That breath creates a small space between what happened and what we do next. Inside that space, ask, what else might be true? Maybe that person is overwhelmed and they're misunderstood, or I misunderstood them. Maybe there's a need beneath the behavior. We don't have to solve the mystery. We are simply keeping our first assumption from being our final verdict. When appropriate, we can replace accusation with curiosity. Instead of, what is wrong with you? Try this. Are you doing okay? Instead of, you obviously don't care, try, this doesn't seem like you. Is something going on? That pause gives us a chance to respond according to our values instead of our irritation. When we respond emotionally, we lose rational thought. Take a breath. That depresses that emotion and allows you to respond rationally. All right, it's time for the Kindness Gradebook. The gradebook is not about shame or perfection. It simply helps us assess our choices and identify one place where we can grow. Think about a recent moment when someone frustrated, disappointed, or inconvenienced you. How did you respond? Well, I give myself a F if I added to the burden. I insulted the person, embarrassed them, spread a rumor, or intentionally made the situation worse. I give myself a D if I reacted without considering their humanity. I snapped, dismissed them, or immediately assumed the worst without stopping to ask what might be happening. I'll give myself an average grade, a C, if I avoided causing additional harm. I controlled my outward reaction, but I made no effort to understand, listen, or help. I get a B if I paused and chose a kinder response. I questioned my first assumption, kept my tone respectful, and gave the person room to explain. I'll give myself an A if I responded with active compassion. I listened, asked a caring question, offered appropriate help, or adjusted something within my control while maintaining healthy boundaries. A+. Well, how do I earn an A+? At the Kindness Effect, A+ are equal to some sort of leadership. So, in this case, I helped kindness multiply. I not only responded compassionately, but I showed leadership. I encouraged others to withhold judgment, helped create a fair solution, or modeled a person that made the group more understanding and supportive. Leadership by example can be very powerful here. An A+ does not mean rescuing everyone or taking responsibility for problems that are not yours. It means your kindness moved beyond one interaction and helped create another ripple. What grade would you give your response? Be honest, but don't use the grade as a label for who you are. An F response does not make you an F person. It just tells you where growth can begin. Choose one action that could raise your response by 1 grade the next time. Don't try to go from an F to an A+ overnight. Just 1 grade, 1 breath, 1 better question, 1 more compassionate choice. All right, every episode we're going to ask what's next. What's one practical thing you can do immediately? I like to use SMART goals, and SMART is an acronym for something specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Now, you may want to write your answers in a journal. Check out kindnesseffect.net. We do have some journals on sale there that are branded with our beautiful heart logo. So here are your 3 what's next questions. Number 1, who is one person I may have judged without knowing their whole story? Think about that. It doesn't have to be recent. It could be any time. Number 2, what one specific action will I take? Pause before reacting, ask a caring question, listen without interrupting, or offer one appropriate form of help. Pick one of those, not all of them. Start somewhere small. And number 3, when will I do it? Today, within 24 hours, or the next time I see the person. Keep it small and specific. You do not have to solve anyone's life. You may simply ask, "How are you?" Really? Then give them enough time to answer. Every person we meet is carrying a story we cannot completely see. The person in front of us is more than the delay they caused, the mistake they made, or the tone we thought we heard. They are a whole human being. And so are we. We won't handle every moment perfectly, I sure don't. But the next time irritation rises, can you just pause, take that breath, become curious? We can choose not to add unnecessary weight to someone else's burden. And when we help other people make that same choice, kindness begins to multiply. One breath, one question, one small act. This is how a kindness grade improves, and this is how a ripple begins. I'm Jim Ellis, and this has been The Kindness Effect. Until next time, be kind to the people around you, and leave a little room for the stories you cannot see.